Hi everyone, I'm making a video. And not only is it a video, it is a pen review, and I feel like I've never done a pen review properly. Why would I do this? But I feel kind of inspired to do a pen review for whatever reason. And so here we go. We're going to talk about the Kaweco All Sport Brass. I believe it's the All Sport, although this only says Sport, so I'm not quite sure. It is not the first Kaweco pen that I've had. I've actually had a couple. I've had a couple sports and a Lilliput at one point in my life, a couple years ago. I always liked the idea of the Kaweco. I like the shape, I like the design, I like the sizes, but in my experience in the past, their nibs have been really finicky and unpredictable, and sometimes you get a great one and sometimes you don't. And in addition, the converter for the Kaweco Sports are tiny. It's like, what's the point? I wish I had one to share with you, and maybe it's not as small as I remember, but I was just like, this is going to last maybe a day of writing. And I don't want to use cartridges because that kind of defeats one of the big things that I really love about fountain pens, is the reusability and the zero waste that is, as a result. But recently I started, actually inspired by ODE here on YouTube, and I'll post the link down below to his channel and his video specifically. He talked about, he reviewed these little ink cartridge plugs, brass plugs, so that when you refill an ink cartridge, which is totally doable, you can plug them up, and then so that way you can refill a bunch of cartridges and plug them and travel with them, so you don't have to bring like a whole kit and caboodle. I'll show you my setup that I am currently using for traveling with this pen. Right now it does have a random international cartridge that I had that was given with a pen at one point, and this has been refilled with Diamine Ancient Copper. It's in there. The carrying capacity of these cartridges is a lot better than the converters, in my opinion. So, as the reviewers do, let's have a closer look. Okay, I don't know why it's so funny to me that I'm doing a pen review right now, even though this channel is mostly about pens. It's just not something I've ever done. But let's take a closer look at the size of this little tiny Kaweco Sport. This is next to a Pelikan M800, which is a substantial pen. And this is a weighty pen. However, this little Kaweco Brass feels like it's twice the weight of the Pelikan pen. I don't mind it. It does feel a little bit heavy when posted, a little bit back weighted. Of course, this is a massive cap, but it's doable. And for me, I can actually write with it unposted as well, which is really nice. I like being able to have that option. One of the things I think is funny about this pen is how tiny the nib is. It feels kind of disproportionate. Maybe not without the cap. Maybe it feels a little more proportionate, but with this giant whopping cap on the back, it's kind of crazy. Look how tiny that nib is. But that's just an aesthetic preference. It does not alter the functionality of the nib in any shape, but it's tiny. So this Sport came with a little box and a single cartridge. It did not come with a clip, so that is something to keep in mind. They usually do not come with a clip, and you will want to buy one separately if that is the case. You don't need a clip as a roll stop just because of this, what is this, an octagonal? I don't know how many sides it has. So the cap prevents it from rolling around. But I like actually having a clip just because of how I carry my pens. And the reason why I've started to carry this pen, and this is like, I have the travel bug right now, and so I am obsessed with planning out how I would travel and what pens I would take. I've really been enjoying just using one pen, even though I have many inked up right now, and I should do something about that. But but because of how I carry my pens right there on the side, and I really like it being accessible like that, and I just toss this whole little journal setup into my backpack or whatever I'm traveling with. The pen is vulnerable a little bit, so I've been wanting to travel with something that I can beat up, that I can drop off of a cliff and retrieve and still write with, that I could roll over with a truck, because you know, these are the things I like to do with my pens. But this feels like it is so substantial that it could take a beating and never skip a beat, which is really nice, and one of the things that I'm drawn to about this pen. I do have another brass pen. I've had a Cross Customs brass pen, which is just as substantial as this Kaweco, but it was huge and really heavy and just too much for me personally. So here's another brass pocket pen. You can see it's really tiny. This was made by the Travelers Company, and as a pen, it is completely well and good and functioning, and it writes nicely, and it's attractive, and it is a pen that writes, and that's great. But the materials that they used, it just doesn't feel as substantial, which really bothers me, because I wanted to get a metal pen for the durability of it, not for the aesthetic of it. This feels much more of an aesthetic choice in materials than in a choice of practicality. It feels like these materials would not last very long, like it will get scuffed up really easily, that it you couldn't drop it from a cliff or roll over with it roll over it with a car, but it's still a good pen. So don't get me wrong, I just really love how substantial this is, and for the kind of traveling that I want to do, this is the pen. It came in this little case. You guys, I'm sure if you are interested in Kawecos, have seen all of these things before, but I've reused this case. This is my plan, at least. I haven't actually tried this out yet because I haven't traveled yet. I'll be doing that very soon. I'm gonna go up to the mountains to visit my mom. So currently, this is how I am preparing for when I run out of ink. And it's a little elaborate and kind of ridiculous. So I look forward to having some cartridge plugs in my future so that I can fill up a bunch of these cartridges. This is a cartridge that has already been flushed out. I can fill them up before I go, plug them up, and then just travel with a couple of cartridges instead. But for now, what I'm doing is I have this little sample vial filled with the Diamine Ancient Copper, which is what I'm currently using in this pen. That's more than enough ink for how long I'm going. And then I have this syringe, because you do have to use a syringe to not only pierce the hole of a cartridge if you're flushing it out for the first time, but to fill it. So of course, you know how these things work. You'd want to fill up your syringe and then put in the ink. And you can see this all done on ODE's channel. Again, I'll link that video below. I thought it was really helpful. So that's my little setup, and then I have this little cleaning rag, of course, to wipe off any ink if it gets a little messy. And I think that'll work. It's small enough that I don't think it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt. And then I don't have to bring an entire bottle of ink, which I think will be great. So let's look at a writing sample. Okay, excuse my my humor. I've been corrected on how I write The Rain in Spain so many times, and I've given up on the proper way, and I'm just gonna do it my way, which is falls and plains. Anyways, so as you can see, this pen keeps up really, really well, and it doesn't miss a beat. And you can hear there's a little bit of feedback, but the feedback that lets you know you're making contact with the paper, but not scratchy or annoying or misaligned. This is a really well-tuned nib, and it's certainly not the wettest nib. As you can see, it's a little dry, but this is also a drier ink as well. But it functions really well. It keeps up, and it feels very nice to write with. It's super smooth, and like I said, just the right amount of feedback. And even like keeping it exposed to air, which I'm always kind of like, I don't know, weird about. If I am not using my pen for a second, I like to cap my pen because I'm so worried about it drying out, which is really silly. But I can do that, leave it exposed for some time, and it will continue to write, which is wonderful. So I have been very impressed with this little Kaweco Sport and this nib. This is the nicest Kaweco nib I have experienced thus far. Now keep in mind, I haven't purchased a Kaweco Sport or Lilliput in at least 3 years. Yeah, so it's been a long time. I was talking with Andrew from Pen Friends, and he was saying that Kaweco sources, or he thought he had heard that Kaweco sources many different, like Bakyovo and somewhere else, and so that might account for the inconsistency. So I don't know who they were using in the past when I was purchasing these, or if I just got really lucky with a nice one. But I really like this pen. It will fulfill that need, that travel pen need, I think, really quite well. I will feel very, very comfortable hiking around with this and camping with this. And I just do enjoy how substantial this feels, and that it writes. So you can't go wrong with a pen that writes. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, this paper, by the way, was Leuchtturm, and I will talk to you soon. Happy writing, everyone.